Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth ever Highlight Haven interview. My name is Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by a very special guest. He's a play by play broadcaster for the Aberdeen Ironbirds. Let me welcome Michael Marcantonini to the show. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Matthew. Happy to do it, and always love talking sports and broadcasting. And it's always great when we can talk both at the same time, man.
Of course, thanks for coming on. So let's get it started. On LinkedIn, you stated that your versatile skill set includes writing, media relations, interviewing, TV, radio reporting, and hosting audio and video production, social media, and graphics. Can you explain why it's so important to be able to do so many different things and have that versatility that you talked about?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things in sports broadcasting and just in sports media in general to be able to do so many different things and also just have experience and know kind of what goes into all those different aspects of the industry. Um, I think that for me, knowing how hard it is to find jobs in this industry and to find full-time opportunities and substantial opportunities that can keep you going long term in your career. It's only going to help you to know how to do different things. So I mean, I'm a play-by-play broadcaster. That's what I love doing the most. That's what I have the most experience in. But the fact that I can do interviews, whether it's on camera or audio interviews. What I can host TV and radio shows. I can write, and I like doing all that stuff. I know how to do a little bit of social media stuff. I edit and film, my own videos, and do a lot of. I pretty much every day do audio and video editing in some way. So I'm doing all of that all the time, even though play-by-play broadcasting is my main job. But just like an athlete, I mean, specifically a baseball player, if there's a guy out there who can play not just shortstop, but he can fill in at third base and second base and play a little outfield and, hit in different spots in the lineup. He's not just a leadoff hitter. He can bat fourth or sixth or ninth, things like that. I mean, that's just going to help you. I mean, teams love players that can play all over the diamond. So teams on the front office side or just the employee side want people that can do so many different things. And even if you don't pursue all those different areas, even if you're just sticking to one or two things, it's good to know what goes into all the other stuff because I know what our social media people with the Ironbirds are doing. And I understand that part of the job. And I know what the production team needs to do in order to do their jobs. And I appreciate that. And it's good just to have that perspective for sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned that baseball part of it. It's kind of like a five-tool player brought into broadcasting, which I think is a great way of putting it. So let's go to the next question. You also did broadcasting in Australia as the co voice of the Melbourne Aces. Can you describe what it was like being able to travel the world while still being able to do what you love?
Yeah, man, going out to Australia was incredible. I mean, that's the best 4.5 months I've ever had. It's not only was it an awesome career experience, getting to call baseball games during the winter and getting reps calling baseball games when really nobody else was back home, and just getting to call baseball games in another country and experience baseball out there. But it was just an awesome life experience. I mean, when I wasn't at the ballpark and I had free time, I was exploring new cities. I was going to every different beach that I could possibly go to. So it was just so awesome. I tell people it was like a study abroad, like in college when people go to other countries and study abroad for a semester, instead of exploring another country and going to class during the day, I was exploring another country and broadcasting baseball games. So I mean, everything I was doing out there was stuff I liked to do, and it was fun. There was a group of five of us that were from the United States that the team hired to work seasonal roles, and including me and including one other broadcaster. So we did the broadcast together. But I mean, that was an awesome crew. We all lived on the same floor of the same building. We pretty much spent every day together for 3.5 to 4 months, and then I spent an extra month out there just traveling a little bit, visiting some people, seeing things before I came back to the States. But man, that was the best time of my life. It was so much fun.
Absolutely, just living the dream out there. Good for you. So, recently you had a broadcast with Jim Duquette, and you mentioned that you hadn't met him in person until a few hours before the game started. How were you able to build such a good connection with such a little amount of time knowing him.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I take pride in with what I do, and just what makes me unique, and what will hopefully separate me from the pack moving forward in my career is I'm a people person. I'm great with communication. I think I just have a natural ability to connect with people, and it doesn't matter who I'm talking to, whether it's just a conversation with somebody I just met in regular life, or having somebody as my guest color commentator on a broadcast. I think I have a natural ability to make them feel comfortable, just facilitate a really good back and forth conversation. And it's something that I think you can learn. It's a skill that you can learn, but I think it's a skill that I kind of just had. And I'm really like, I think I legitimately think I'm really good at just working with anybody. So all the
Mhm.
guest color commentators I've had this year, I've been able to find out what their kind of style is, what their comfort level is being on the broadcast, and whether it's asking them questions about what they do to get them comfortable, or the lead into having them do some analysis during the broadcast. I kind of just, look for body language, kind of get a feel for their tone of voice, their voice inflection of, hey, what will work to make the broadcast great. But with Jim, it was just so easy because I mean, he spent almost 20 years working in a major league front office, co-GM of the Orioles, GM of the Mets, and now he's done MLB Network radio stuff and SNY TV stuff for so long. I mean, this guy just knows baseball, and he knows how to communicate as well. So that made it really easy. I mean, we spent the first hour when Jim was at the ballpark, just talking about baseball and kind of swapping stories of what we've seen and who we know, things like that. And we could have done that all night. But then, just going into the broadcast, it was just natural, and there was just a great flow to it, which was really cool.
Yeah, and also recently you got the exciting opportunity to call a no hitter. Can you describe what that experience was like in the booth?
Man, the no hitter was really cool. That's easily a top three moment of my career.
Mhm.
I think really the only things that I would rank higher would be getting to call the final out of a playoff series that got us to the championship series a couple years ago, and maybe the walk off home run call for Jackson Holiday, where Luke Combs uh, tweeted about it and said it was the best he ever heard. But those
Mhm.
are really the only two that could possibly go ahead of it. The no hitter was awesome. It's something you can't predict. You can't really prepare for it and say, "Oh, I'm going to call a no hitter today," or "What if our guys throw a no hitter?" But the whole game was kind of a blur. I mean, I was pretty aware of the no hits for a while. It was after the third inning, and our starter came off the mound, and it wasn't like I was trying to say that there was a no hit bid going or that this was going to happen, but I said, Zach Fruit threw three hitless, scoreless innings, so it just kind of came out that way, and kind of from then on, I paid attention to the zero in the hit column, and we just kept doing it. I mean, it's really hard to do that in minor league baseball because most games are you don't see the same pitcher go the whole way.
Mhm.
A lot of games using three, four, sometimes even five pitchers. We used four pitchers. So everybody has to pretty much be on, and our guys were that day. So, but I mean, it was so fun. Like the last few innings, my hands are shaking a little bit, the heart's pounding a little extra, and it's just fun, but like in the best way possible. Like I love having that feeling during a game, knowing how important it is. And that final out, man, I mean, that was cool. I mean, it
Mhm.
was history. I mean, third no hitter in franchise history, but first in our ballpark. And the team's been around since 2002. So it was really special to be a part of that. And just, yeah, kind of a blur. There's so much that I just kind of don't remember from it. And the initial reactions, like, I made the call when it happened. And it took a couple days where I was like, wow, that just happened.
Mhm. Yeah, and you mentioned that Luke Combs retweet. I actually want to talk about that a little later in the interview, but we'll get to that eventually. So, of course, when you call baseball, there are many different situations where a game may be going slow or it might be a blowout. In these situations, how are you still able to keep the broadcast interesting and exciting?
So it's easy when I have another person on with me, when I've got one of the guests in the booth with me, because then you kind of just transition to more conversational stuff. Like I could ask them questions about their career, or just ask them questions about the game going on. But when it's just me, it's tough. So I make sure I have a lot of stuff prepared. So before the season, I write player bios for all the guys on the roster that are going to start with us. And then as we get new players throughout the season, I update those bios and write some more for them. So when there's a point in the game, I was just thinking about this the other day, when there's a slow point in the game where, there's a mound visit or the pitcher's taking a while and really using every second of that pitch clock, and there's just not a great flow, it's a blowout, things like that. I'll go to those player bios. It's on a Google Doc, and I just pull it up
Mhm.
on a tab on my computer. I'll search for a certain player that's relevant at the time, the batter, pitcher, whoever, and I'll just start pulling stuff from that and talk about whether it's personal stuff or some stats, some of their college numbers, how they got into the Orioles organization. So I'll go into story mode or just interesting fact mode and start throwing that stuff out there in between pitches of the game or in between batters. And from there, maybe something pops into my head and I think of another talking point or think of another story and kind of tie it all in. And the goal is just to make it fun for the audience and enjoyable. Like, I don't want to be the broadcaster who is known as, hey, when it's a blowout or a really boring game, this is the guy to turn off and we'll go watch another game. Like, I want people to stick around and continue to watch and listen, even if it's not the most exciting game. So that's my goal, is just to tell who these guys are as people and not just as athletes. And I think I've done a pretty good job of that. And I've gotten some pretty good feedback. So that's just the goal: always make it interesting and always have enough prepared that you can go to, your plan B, C, D, and all that. When it needs to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, can you explain why you value mental health so much in your broadcasting career?
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I value mental health so much is because I had a really tough time a few years ago finding opportunities and landing jobs within the broadcasting industry. I value it because I've seen how much it affected my life, and once I got it back on track, that's when things started to click and the timing started to work out. And it's no coincidence. So during the 2022, or right before the 2022 baseball season, I accepted a job with a minor league team after 2 years out of it. I worked for a team in 2019. That season ended. Worked a different job in the off season. Then the COVID pandemic hits, and it took away an opportunity that I had with a team because jobs were being eliminated. There was no season, and no minor league season. MLB season was shortened. Then 2021, I had interviews and was a finalist for jobs and just didn't land anything. So I spent 2 years out of it, 2 full years out of it. Finally got an offer to be a broadcast assistant for a team in 2022. So I was getting back into it, but it just wasn't the right fit. I think I knew all along that it wasn't where I wanted to go, and there were some red flags, but kind of ignored them because I needed that opportunity to get back in. But got to a point where I was getting misled about the job, getting taken advantage of before the season even started. So I decided to walk away. And at the time, my mental health was deteriorating for a lot of reasons. I had some rough years, losing family members, losing opportunities within broadcasting, just COVID overall. I think that tore up a lot of people mentally. So all of that, like, this was kind of the final straw, the breaking point where I realized I needed to step away from this. And although pursuing broadcasting in my career was important, none of it was going to matter if I didn't get my mental health under control. I think I would have suffered greatly, both mentally and physically, if I had stayed in that job. So I walked away. Took a couple months to get things under control. Started going to therapy, and from there, that's kind of when the turnaround started. I mean, I'll tell you, like, from the time the first few weeks that I walked away from that job until really a couple months into doing therapy, like, I was in bad shape. I mean, it was tough. I mean, I was so upset that it took me over 2 years to get back into working in baseball and broadcasting, and then to have that opportunity be what it was. I mean, it really tore me apart, and at times I thought my career was over. And now looking back, I think I should have known that my career wasn't over and I'm, just getting started. But when you're dealing with mental health and when you're struggling mentally, you can't think that way. Like, your brain doesn't process that, hey, look, we're going to get past this. Your brain's thinking like, this is the worst thing ever. I
Mhm.
don't know what I'm going to do. It's such a hard industry to be in anyway. And now all this is happening. So mental health therapy was fantastic. I mean, it helped a lot. It really did. And it's not a fix to everything and it's not for everybody, but I gave it a shot. It worked well, and it helped me realize that, like, if I change my mindset and just kind of work through these, like, things are going to get better. So that's when opportunities with the Ironbirds started up, and I got opportunities with the University of Delaware to call college sports play by play, and then the opportunity with Australia happened, and really from there I've just been riding that wave of, hey, I was at maybe my lowest point, and now I'm on this upward trajectory and just trying to keep that going. So I prioritize mental health, and I talk about it, and I think it's so important because I've seen how it's positively affected my career once I got it under control. And I will say there are times where I don't, it's tough. It's tough to always prioritize it. There are times where I'm feeling down and just not feeling right. And, maybe I take something out on somebody, or maybe don't have as much sympathy for somebody else. But for the most part, I really try to keep in mind of my mental health, other people's mental health, and just being kind and grateful. And I've seen how far it's taken me. So I'll continue to support it, and I'll continue to advocate for it.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're doing better now. So let's get to some more fun questions.
Cool.
And you mentioned the Luke Combs play earlier. Here's where I wanted to talk about that. For those who don't know, previously there was a play where Jackson Holliday hit a home run for the Ironbirds. And when you made the call, you said, like a runaway southbound train, that ball is going, going, gone, referring to a song by country singer Luke Combs. That call was later noticed by Combs, and he retweeted it on Twitter, now X, stating, "Best home run call I've ever heard." Can you explain what was going through your mind as that situation played out?
Yeah, man, that's another situation where it took me weeks to be like, did that really just happen? And it's one now where I still think about it, and I'm like, wow, like, I think every broadcaster dreams of having a viral moment like that, or having one of their calls just get seen everywhere and blown up, and a celebrity to take note of it. And it happened. I mean, it happened organically. It's not something you can prepare for or plan out. It just has to happen naturally. So, I mean, the night that I made that call, when Jackson came to bat, I didn't necessarily think I was going to use it. Like a couple weeks prior, when I listened to that song for the first time, I'm like, hey, I could probably work part of this song into a home run call. And it was just a creative idea I had, but I knew it had to be the right time, meaning this couldn't just be, down 5 runs on a solo homer in the bottom of the fifth inning, like in a day game that didn't matter. Like this had to be night game, big crowd, one of the top prospects at the plate with a chance to win the game. And that's what happened. Holiday comes up to the plate, number one prospect in the sport. I knew he had a chance to walk it off. He had a couple opportunities to walk it off in previous games, and he either just hit a game tying single or maybe didn't deliver in that opportunity. But this one, something just felt right that he was going to crush a baseball and deliver for the team. So when the ball went up in the air, I thought to use it because it had been in my head for a couple weeks, and it just came out. Like I just said it flowed so well. I felt great about it in the moment. And even before he finished his home run trot, in my head I'm thinking like, wow, like I just nailed that call. It felt great. You just know sometimes as a broadcaster. And there's a lot that goes into it: preparation, getting better each game. So it felt good to do that. After the game, I was buzzing. The post was circulating on social media, MILB and MLB Pipeline tweeting out the clip. And there were people commenting like, hey, love the call. Hey, this broadcaster is awesome for that call. This call goes hard. And then, it's on Instagram as well. There's people showing me love in the comments. And then the next day, I had just gotten out of the shower early afternoon, and I picked up my phone, and I saw a bunch of notifications, and I opened up a text from Nate Laws, our communications and marketing manager with the Ironbirds, and it was just a tweet link, and it said, twitter.com/Luke Combs, whatever status. And I'm like, no freaking way he saw this call. So I opened it, I saw the video, he quote tweeted it and said, best home run call I've ever heard, and just kind of dropped my phone on the bed, and I was just kind of speechless. I was like, no way. And texting my parents and brother, and I was getting texts from other people too. It was crazy. So that was all kind of a blur too, but just such a cool thing, and I'm so happy it happened. And Um, I mean, that's so cool. It's just something that I decided to do, be creative, make a pop culture song reference in a home run call, and now everybody knows me for it.
Yeah, such an awesome turn of events right there. So, also on your YouTube channel during All Mic'd Up 2023, episode 3, you were able to interview Jackson Holiday. Can you explain what that opportunity was like to have a one on one conversation with him?
Yeah, it was great talking to Jackson. He's an awesome kid, and he's very reserved, and he's not like loud. There's some guys like when they're playing baseball or just in general, they're loud. They're joking around with people. They're really showing off their personality. Jackson's more reserved, and he doesn't show a ton of emotion out on the field, but he's awesome. Like I really enjoyed the conversations that I had with him and the couple of interviews that I did. But getting a chance to do an on-camera interview with him was cool because and he does so many interviews, and I think they probably all just run together for him. But the interview that we did together, like I know for a fact, I asked him some questions that he's never heard before, and it got some pretty unique answers out of him. It got him to smile and laugh at some certain things, and that's my
Mhm.
goal with every episode of All Mic'd Up is ask these guys questions they've never heard before. Not always ask them the hard hitting baseball questions because everybody asks them those questions all the time, and they kind of run together. But I mean, it was cool. Like I found out that Jackson loves to play pickleball in the off season and loves to play against his dad, seven-time All-Star Matt Holliday, and they're really competitive with it. And I found that he loves. I was asking him about his favorite foods. He loves cookies. Like that, those are one of his weaknesses. And telling me a little bit about what he does in the off season. I asked him. One of the funniest responses was, I asked him his favorite subject in school, and he said baseball right away. Which we both laughed at that. And then he said, "Well, probably science because I like learning about the ocean and stuff." Um, I mean, stuff like that, like just random answers that like nobody else is asking him stuff like that. So it was really cool to sit down with him. I'm glad that he took the time to do it and was appreciative of it and happy to do it. So it was cool. I mean, that video has almost 500 views too, which doesn't hurt.
Mhm. And I don't mean to ask too many questions about Jackson Holiday right now, but recently we've been seeing him start to get the hang of things at the major league level for the Orioles, including his first home run being a grand slam. From your perspective, what has it been like being able to watch him progress and become the player that he is today?
It's cool because he never really struggled at high A. I think his first 2 games he went hitless, but he reached base in both of them. And I was there for his debut, which was on the road, and he was just a little jumpy at the plate, swinging early in counts,
Mhm.
way ahead of pitches, hitting the ball off the end of the bat, things like that. But by his third game at high A, he was locked in. Hit a homer and triple in his third game, and he's just one of those guys where you're like, he can't be this good at this age. He's just an outlier. You're not supposed to be that good that quickly. But yeah, he didn't really ever struggle in high A. He was always kind of locked in and doing damage, which was great. But I mean, I saw him get a lot better as a fielder, as a defender, and just some little things to his game that most people wouldn't notice, but I did because I saw him on a daily basis for 2 months. But then he gets to the big leagues, and first time in his life he struggled at baseball, goes back down, and I knew he'd be even more ready this time. And it's just really cool to see him balling out and doing his thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, the Orioles are tied for the number one spot in the AL East with the Yankees, while the Guardians lead the entire American League. Of course, it's safe to say that this postseason will be a very competitive one for Baltimore. What are your expectations for the Orioles come playoff time?
I think they'll be in it. I mean, I think they're much more prepared this year than last year for that playoff run. Last year it was a very young team, mostly homegrown talent, and not a lot of guys on that roster had postseason experience. And if they did, it wasn't the stars of the team. It was like the veteran back end starters or maybe a reliever here and there. But this year, I mean, that roster is littered with players who have postseason experience, especially Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman and the cornerstones of the franchise who were on that team last year. And now Corbin Burns, the ace of the staff, is there. Zach Eflin has pitched in the World Series with the Phillies that they bring him in. Craig Kimbrell has a World Series ring back into the bullpen. So this team is much more prepared for the playoffs just because of experience, both overall experience and the Orioles guys that were there last year. And I think they're they went through a kind of a rough stretch where people were down on them, and now right now in early to mid August, they're getting hot again, and the vibes are back. And I think they're going to ride that wave into the postseason. I think Brandon Hyde's a really good manager. Mike Elias and his crew did a great job building this team from the start of the season until now. And they've got great depth, young players. Holiday and Mayo are up there. So I think they'll be right in it. I think they should be the favorites in the American League right now because of the experience and the added veteran presence and the star talent. So I'm really excited to see what they do.
Yeah, I'm expecting pretty big things from them. So, when doing play by play, like anything else, there are many positives and negatives. Can you describe one of the biggest struggles you face while doing play by play?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few things that come to mind. Now I'm in my fifth year broadcasting games in professional baseball. So things
Mhm.
come a little bit easier to me and more natural, and I feel better about them. But one of the toughest things to do is find the time to tell a story start to finish and tell it effectively. So that's one of the things that I've been working on with the pitch clock in baseball now. The game moves faster. The pace of the game is accelerated compared to what it was even 5 years ago, or what most people grew up with, whether it's playing or watching or broadcasting. So now there's even less time than there was before to tell stories, and stories are, I think, the most important part of play-by-play broadcasting. Of course, the actual play-by-play is important, but anybody can do that. And for the most part, it's tough to make, you know, every play-by-play broadcaster is different, but at some point you kind of all are saying the same thing when describing the action. So I think being able to tell stories, compelling stories, fun, unique stories is what separates people. So that's why I say it's most important. So now I've only got a certain amount of time in between batters or in between pitches of an at bat or while a pitcher's on the mound to tell a story. And it's hard because you've got to lead into the story. You've got to make people understand why you're telling it. And then you've got to tell it and let people know why it matters and wrap that up either before a half inning ends, before an at bat ends, before a ball's put in play, and you've got to start calling the action again. So that's always tough to try to tell those stories quickly and concisely. But it's a work in progress. You just got to keep doing it. Just same with calling the action. You have to just keep doing it every day and finding what works and kind of getting the timing down. But that's hard because there's really no blueprint for how to tell a story or when to mix those in.
Yeah, and we're getting close to the end here. Is there anyone that you found as an inspiration while you were getting into the broadcasting industry?
So growing up, every morning before I left for school, I'd always watch Sports Center, and the end of Sports Center would be the top 10 plays from the previous day.
Mhm.
And I loved when Stuart Scott was doing the voice and over highlights for them, anchoring those, and he just put such an awesome personal touch on it, added his own flair and style to it that I thought I wanted to be like him for a while, and whether I was going to pursue that route of broadcasting or not, just a great person to look up to. When I realized that play-by-play broadcasting was what I wanted to do, I started really paying attention to how different broadcasters called games and all that. Growing up watching Phillies games, Harry Callis was always a big inspiration to me. Definitely a unique style, but I wanted to, the goal for a play-by-play broadcaster is to have people associate your name and voice with a team and associate that team with you. And I think that's kind of happened with me in the Ironbirds, and I'm hoping that that continues and eventually I get associated with a big league team as the voice of that team. But Harry Kalas was an inspiration for that, with how people loved him and how the players loved him. Never said anything bad about anybody. But there's been so many different broadcasters over the years. Matt Vasgersian has been an inspiration. I really like Dan Schulman with ESPN, Brian Anderson with Turner Sports, Joe Davis with Fox Sports. So many different broadcasters out there that I pay attention to and not necessarily want to be like, but just picking their brains, or whether it's I've been able to talk to somebody personally or just picking up stuff when I listen to or watch a game. So there's so many different ones, but personally, I've been able to connect with two of the Tampa Bay Rays broadcasters over the past couple of years, Neil Solondz and Andy Freed. They've been great mentors to me. I was put in touch with them by a mutual friend, and they've listened to my demo stuff. They've given me feedback when I was at an Orioles game earlier this year with media credentials. They were playing the Rays and sat with them and ate dinner and talked to them. They had me hang out in their booth for a couple innings just to experience that. So they've been great. Scott Fransky from the Phillies, talked to him throughout the offseason. He was a great person to talk to. And Kevin Brown with the Orioles, I met him when I was working at the Baltimore play-by-play camps in 2022 before the Ironbirds even hired me. And ever since then, we've stayed in touch. He did a lot for me without even knowing it. The conversation we had at that camp was when I was in this stretch of almost 3 years without calling games in pro baseball, and he listened. He told me that he understands what I was going through because he called games in the minors and almost decided to quit doing it because of some things going on. But been able to stay in touch with him, and he'll always answer my emails. We've had a chance to talk a couple times at Camden Yards, so those are some of the guys who've really helped me on a personal level.
Yeah, I was at that Baltimore camp too. Kevin Brown is definitely an awesome guy. Now, I have one final question to ask, and that is, if there was one piece of advice you could give to an aspiring sports broadcaster like me, what would it be?
I get asked that a lot, and I'm glad that I do because, I feel like a lot of people would just give you a cliche answer on that. I think for me, I try to make the answers unique and, really go deep with my answer on this. But I say the most important thing is to never lose sight of why you got into it in the first place. You're telling me you're 13 years old. We met at the play-by-play sports broadcasting camps, and you're still so young. I mean, middle school, not even in high school yet. Never lose sight of why you got interested in sports broadcasting, regardless of what you want to pursue, whether you pursue it more in high school or college, or if you want to actually make it a career. Just remember that it's supposed to be fun. If it's something you're passionate about, you really won't lose sight of why you're doing it. I mean, there are going to be tough times. There are going to be people and aspects throughout your life and career that um, it's not something you want to deal with. The people may be discouraging you, or they may be tough to work for, or
Mhm.
circumstances may hit, and you think it's over. I mean, the COVID pandemic, I didn't really know what was going to happen after that. The job that I walked away from because it wasn't the right situation. I mean, there were times when my confidence was shattered, but I never lost my passion for what I wanted to do and continuing pursuing that path. Never lost the motivation to keep going. So you can rebuild confidence. You can't really rebuild the passion and excitement for it if you lose it. So just don't forget. I mean, if there's ever a tough time in your life and career when you're discouraged or things are tough, don't lose sight of why you got into it, because I'm having the most fun I've ever had broadcasting baseball games. And it's been like that the last couple of years. I'm so excited to go to the ballpark every day when, a lot of people in their jobs, when they get called out of work, or maybe they get to leave early, they're ecstatic because they get away from work. When we've got a rain out or a game postponed, or you lose a game on the schedule for some reason, like I hate that. I want to call as many games as possible. I love going to the ballpark. That's what I want to do. So I think about that, and it's fun knowing that I get paid to do something I really enjoy. So just always keep in mind why you do it, and that'll keep you grounded, and it'll keep you grateful, and you won't take anything for granted because of it.
Yeah, with that being said, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say to the people watching this before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I think just to end things, whoever's tuning into this broadcast, whether you listen to games or watch TV broadcasts of games, give your play-by-play broadcasters some support for the teams that you watch. Meaning, we're always looking for feedback of what we can do better. I try to keep into perspective who's tuning into my broadcasts, and knowing what they want to hear, stories, stats when necessary. But for the people that tune in, whether you're families of players or just people watching the games, local fans, if whenever you can, send in a message to a play-by-play broadcaster, telling them what you think they did well, what they could improve on to make their broadcast better. We appreciate that a lot because it helps us get better. And I've had some feedback from families, fans, in my time at Aberdeen, and it makes my day. I've become a better broadcaster because of it, and I have a better perspective on why I'm calling the game and who I'm calling the game for. So always love that support, and we appreciate that support. So definitely want to throw that out there because broadcasters, we got to stick together, and we got to support each other.
Yeah, 100%. Again, big thanks to Michael Marcantonini for being the 5th ever Highlight Haven guest, and we'll see you next time.